people different ways. So the question that I have is, as God spoke to you, how did he speak to you? Was it with a picture? Or was it with words? Or was it with a feeling on the inside, or a physical feeling? Or what happened? So go back and think about those times that God spoke to you. And that's why I want you to make the list. Okay? Make the list of all the times. And the first time you're working on this list, you're going to say, well, God doesn't speak to me. Baloney. So if you think that God hasn't spoken to you, then, or you can't think of very many, come and talk to me. And so you can ask questions even right now, because every time I've had a conversation with people and just asked some simple questions. Well, has God ever, like I talked about earlier. So what about when you're reading? Has God ever made a passage highlighted to you? Or those kinds of things. And as you look at those, write them down, and then think about what was going on at the time. And then I want you to also think about, if you can remember, it's like, what was it like when you heard that word? And maybe you can't remember the past ones, but I want you to start thinking about this list going forward, okay? So, was it a thought that popped into your mind? Or was it something different? Sometimes I've had it kind of be like a thought that pops into my mind. Or when it's, the other night, it was interesting because it was really hot, which is strange in the middle of the winter, right? But the heater was not too high. I woke up, it was so hot at night. And I couldn't sleep for a period of time, and suddenly God started bringing back to my memory some things that had happened, and then he went on from there and talked about a few things. So that doesn't happen to me a lot of times, but it has, where God brings back something to my memory. So when I was in New Zealand, Emmy and I were not engaged. I was interested in her, and I remember this because we were doing concerts. We were doing some stuff over in New Zealand. It was like a short-term mission trip type thing, and we were doing concerts and teaching and prayer and music. So we were doing music out in the square, public, kind of thing. And on a break, it was my brother and his wife's anniversary was really close to that time, and so I was thinking about getting them an anniversary gift. And behind where we were, there was some people selling some things, and there was pictures, and there was this, those pictures where it's all like in black and white, and then they have one thing that stands out in color. You ever seen those pictures? Mm-hmm. So they had a number of these pictures, and one of them, it was a lot of them, they were like a little boy and a girl, and they were doing something. One, a boy was probably giving the little girl a rose or something, and the rose is red. And there was this one that when I saw it, it was like, oh, that would be perfect for them, for my brother and his wife. And they were actually there on the trip as well. And I was like, well, I don't know. So I wasn't, so I didn't get it then. And at the end of the concert, I thought, man, I should just get that. And I went back, and I looked and looked and looked, and it wasn't there. I was like, oh, gosh, what a bummer. That would have been the perfect one. But there was still another one there, and it was pretty good. I said, okay, so I got them that. And so later one night, as I was praying about, it was coming to the end of our trip, and I was really in love with Emmy, but she didn't know it yet. I hadn't expressed it to her. And there had been, I used to live with Pastor Gordon out in Ohio for like 5 years, or in California. By this point I had moved to Ohio, so we weren't living together. And but then we went on this trip, and we were both there. And I had kind of almost given up hope for there being a possibility of marrying her or anything like that at that point. But there we were, and so I was in love with her, and so I stayed up late one night praying, God, what should I do? Because I loved her, but it was like, well, is this, what should I do? And so God brought back to my memory that picture this afternoon, in the afternoon. And I felt like he said, if you don't get her now, you won't have the opportunity later because she'll be gone. I was like, whoa, no! Okay. That was the perfect one. So there was a number of other things that he spoke to me about at that time. But that was an example of a time where he brought back to my memory something that happened and used that as and this is how it applies. So really the picture by itself didn't mean anything, or that situation, but he used that, brought it back to my memory. And so the next day I went and talked to her mom and dad and said, I want to ask Emmy out on a date. Is that okay? Turns out that she was asking her parents at the same time, and their sign was whether or not I would ask her out on a date that next day. And so the rest is history, as they say. No, there's a lot of other details I can give. But those are some practical situations of God speaking and how he spoke. And I mean, I was up late. If we go back and go through this list, so was I asking for something particular? Yes, absolutely. I was asking God, should I marry her? Is this the one? How should I go forward? And so then we had our one date the next day and got engaged kind of that same day. So, but I had known her for a lot of years. But it was very quick. So I was asking for something in particular, and what were you doing when he spoke? At that point, I was crying out. I was asking. I was seeking. I had gone by myself. Everybody else was sleeping, and I was just up praying. Did I hear words or see a picture? In that particular case, I was reminded of a picture, but it was kind of more God speaking. And it wasn't like a voice, because I can't say that, I didn't hear a voice, but I just knew inside. It's like I knew that that this was like a parallel thing. So it wasn't like God was sitting there putting this dialogue into my heart. It was just, I knew inside God was showing me that, and if I didn't, take Emmy now, that I wouldn't have the opportunity later. So it's like I don't know exactly how he said it, but it was something on the inside, and I don't think it was so much even words, but more of a knowing that this is what God wanted me to do. And so did it come to your mind, your heart? So for me, that was somewhere, the picture was probably to my mind, But then the what to do was, I think,